Hey, everybody, welcome back. Hard to believe here we are. It's the end of June already. So, Josh, I've got this phone call the other day from the bank calling me saying, hey, your rental mortgage is up. It doesn't expire until November, but they wanted me to renew early. I chose not to. Was that the right thing to do, or should I have done an early renewal? What do you think, Josh?
You know what, Jay, that absolutely was the right thing to do. I get similar phone calls all of the time. A lot of people who have or most people who have their mortgages up for renewal right now locked in back in 2019. Some of them more recent if they took a short term, but the vast majority locked in 5 years ago, mid 2019. And at that point, they were getting rates below 3%. So if you take an early renewal from your bank, you're locking into today's rates, and some of them are actually going to start your new term right away. And so you would actually lose out on the last few months of that low interest rate that you already have, which doesn't make sense at all. We're currently in a decreasing interest rate environment. Everybody's aware that the Bank of Canada at the beginning of June dropped its interest rate by 0.25%. And everybody's sort of paying attention to those fixed interest rates and saying, when are they going to start dropping? And the truth is, the longer you can wait to lock in your mortgage renewal, probably the better off you are. And I would suggest not pulling the trigger until about 4, maybe 5 weeks prior to your renewal date. If we are going to switch you to a new lender, that process does take 3 or 4 weeks. So you do want to not call a week before your renewal date, but we can start to look at that about a month, 5 weeks before. And then I can give you the advice on whether renewing with your lender makes the most sense or whether you should actually really consider switching over to a different lender. Now, the other question though is, I've been getting similar calls of the Bank of Canada dropped its rate. What happens to my rate? And the truth is, not a lot has changed on the fixed interest rates. We have seen downward movement over the last couple of weeks. But what happens with fixed interest rates is they actually often move before the Bank of Canada does its rate changes. So what happens are fixed interest rates are typically correlated to the bond yield rates. Bond rates are like the Government of Canada savings bonds or other similar types of investments. And you can see here on the chart, I have showing here the bond rate from May 1st to here at the end of June 2024. And they range from about just over 3.8 to just at about 3.3. So there's about 0.5% of total movement over that period of time. And every single time there's a data dump, the market reacts and we see movement in that. If we step back just a little bit, mortgage rates, they do tend to follow those bond rates, but not as rapidly or every day the same way the bond market moves. So what we see here is 3 lines on my chart. The top line is blue. That's the 5-year mortgage rate from one of my lenders. I just went back for the last few months and said, every Monday, what is your interest rate? And they started at 5.09. And then toward the end of May, mid-May, they dropped down to 4.99 on their 5-year fixed rate. And then shortly after the Bank of Canada announcement here early in June, they dropped to 4.89. So it's kind of a more steady, slow movement, not like that bond yield that jumps up and down every single hour almost. Then what I did is I also mapped out the bond rates, but again, I took just the Mondays, so it's not as volatile as our last slide. And you can see it's kind of still going up and down, but generally trending in that downward direction. So in many ways, we can say the bond rate and the fixed mortgage rates, they sort of trend in the same direction. The fixed mortgage rate's just a little bit slower. We've seen about 0.25% of rate movement over the last 2 months, about half of it before the rate announcement from the bank and about half of it after. And we're going to likely continue to see that slow downward trend on the fixed rates as the Bank of Canada continues to lower its rate as well.
Well, that's fascinating. So essentially, what we want to do is wait as long as possible if you have a great rate, right?
Yeah,
Wait till it's almost time for it to expire, and then hopefully the bank gives us a better option than the one they gave me yesterday. So thanks for that. That was
exactly.
very enlightening. If you find this content helpful, like, subscribe. We release a new video once every week. And if you have any other real estate related questions, call me, or if you need a mortgage, call Josh. Thanks. See you next
Thanks.
week.
Thanks, everybody.